A personal introduction. My friends, what you're about to read happened in the borderlands of Arizona, where the desert meets the mountains and where human law sometimes collides with nature's older rules. This is a true account of Officer Grafton Hale, a man I had the privilege of knowing in his final years of service. At 65, Grafton thought his days of meaningful purpose had passed with his wife Sarah's death. He was wrong. Sometimes life saves its most profound lessons for when we think we have nothing left to learn. This story isn't just about a man and a leopard. It's about what happens when we choose compassion over protocol, when two broken souls recognize each other across the divide of species. It reminds us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe rewards that courage in ways we never expect. The blood pooling beneath Grafton Hale looked black in the moonlight, spreading across the packed dirt like spilled motor oil. His shoulder blazed with fire where the bullet had torn through, but that wasn't what made his heart race. It was the leopard standing over him. Sage, they'd named her Sage for the silver-green tint of her coat in certain light, stood with her legs planted wide. Her spotted body a barrier between Grafton and the three men with rifles. Her growl came from somewhere deep, a sound that vibrated through the ground and into Grafton's spine. But she wasn't growling at him. She was protecting him. "Shoot it!" Marcus Volkov's accent thickened with rage. The poacher's rifle swung toward the leopard's head. "Shoot it now!" Sage's lips pulled back, revealing canines that gleamed like ivory daggers. Behind her, barely visible in the shadows of Winston's old barn, two small shapes huddled, her cubs, the ones these men had come to steal. Grafton's radio crackled against his hip, the voice tinny and desperate. "Officer down, officer down." Location, the Caldwell Ranch. All units respond. But Grafton knew they were 20 minutes out at best. 20 minutes was a lifetime when you were bleeding out. 20 minutes was forever when a leopard mother stood between poachers and her babies. The strange thing was, he wasn't afraid. Not of Sage. 3 weeks ago, he'd have drawn his service weapon at the sight of her. 3 weeks ago. He was a different man, living a different life, believing the different truths about the world. 3 weeks ago, before everything changed, Volkov took a step forward. Sage's muscles coiled like springs. The desert held its breath. "You don't understand." Winston Caldwell's voice came from somewhere to Grafton's left, weak but determined. The old rancher was propped against his truck, his own shoulder dark with the blood. "That cat. She knows us now. She knows we're not the enemy." "Shut up, old man." The second poacher, a wiry man with dead eyes, kept his rifle trained on Winston. "This is business." Sage's tail lashed once, twice. Her golden eyes never left Volkov, but one ear swiveled toward Grafton when he groaned. She made a sound, then not a growl, not a roar, but something in between, something almost reassuring. 3 weeks, Grafton whispered, though whether to himself or to the leopard, he wasn't sure. His vision swam, memories and present blurring together. How did 3 weeks lead to this? The radio crackled again. Jake Martinez, his partner, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Grafton, hold on. Emily's with me. We're coming. Just hold on." Emily? His daughter? She'd fought him about the leopards, said he was being reckless, that Mom's death had made him lose perspective. Maybe she was right. But lying here, watching a wild leopard risk her life to protect the man who'd saved her, Grafton thought maybe perspective was overrated. Volkov chambered around. The sound echoed off the barn walls like a judge's gavel. "Last chance," he said. "Move away from the cusp, or I'd drop you both, the cop and the leopard." Sage lowered her head, her powerful haunches bunching. Grafton knew that look. He'd seen it when she hunted, when she played with her cubs, when she'd first learned to trust his touch, she was going to spring. She was going to attack 3 armed men to protect him and her babies. She was going to die. "No!" Grafton gasped, trying to push himself up with his good arm. "Sage, no, it's—" But even as he spoke, even as blood loss made the world tilt and spin, one thought blazed through his mind with perfect clarity. How had a routine night patrol 3 weeks ago led to this moment? Lying in his own blood while a leopard prepared to die defending him. The answer was back there, in the beginning, in that first encounter that had shattered everything he thought he knew about the line between human and animal, between duty and compassion, between the law and what was right. 3 weeks ago, when the call came in about strange sounds near the preserve boundary. 3 weeks ago, when he'd driven out expecting to find teenagers drinking or maybe coyotes in someone's garbage. 3 weeks ago, when instead he'd found her, Sage, caught in an old research snare, her cubs crying in the brush, and Winston Caldwell standing there with a shotgun, both of them about to make a choice that would change everything. The desert wind picked up, carrying the scent of creosote and blood. Sage's growl deepened, Volkov's finger tightened on the trigger, and Grafton's mind spiraled back to where it all began, to that night when 2 old men and a trapped leopard had formed an alliance that should have been impossible. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. 3 weeks earlier, the steering wheel vibrated against Grafton's palms as his patrol car bounced over the washboard dirt road. His headlights carved a tunnel through the darkness, catching the silver-green flash of a jackrabbit's eyes before it bounded into the brush. The radio dispatcher's voice cut through the static. "Unit 7, we've got a complaint about strange sounds near mile marker 42. Resident reports growling, maybe wounded animal." "Copy that." Grafton's throat felt dry, always did on these night shifts. The thermos of coffee in his cup holder had gone cold 2 hours ago, but he took another swig anyway. Bitter, metallic, like everything tasted since Sarah. The dashboard clock read 11:40 p. Emily would call in the morning, like she did every Tuesday. She'd ask if he was eating. He'd lie. She'd know he was lying. They'd both pretend otherwise. Jake would probably be with her. His partner had been driving to Phoenix every weekend for 6 months now, thinking Grafton didn't notice the cologne, the new shirts, the way he checked his phone between calls. Good for them. Emily deserved happiness after watching her mother waste away for 2 years. Pancreatic cancer didn't care that Sarah was only 61, that she'd planned to travel when Grafton retired, that her last coherent words were about the snow leopards on the Nature Channel. "Look, Gray, they're so beautiful, so alone." His shoulder radio crackled. 7, be advised, that's near the Caldwell property line. Winston Caldwell. Grafton's jaw tightened. The rancher had lost 2 calves this month, claimed he'd seen large cat prints. Arizona Game and Fish said no leopards had been confirmed this far north in 5 years. Winston said Game and Fish could kiss his ass. The man had been angry at the world since his boy Tommy died in that hunting accident 10 years back. 17 years old, Grafton had worked the scene. Some things you never forgot. The father holding his son, both covered in blood, neither making a sound. The road curved. Grafton's headlights swept across a section of damaged fence, wire twisted and pulled apart, fresh. The metal gleamed where it had been stretched. He stopped the car, left the engine running. The air outside hit him like opening an oven door, even at midnight. Desert in August. A sound drifted through the darkness. Low, guttural, not a coyote, not a mountain lion either. Something else. Then he heard the cubs crying. The crying came from beyond the torn fence, high-pitched and desperate. Not quite a mule, not quite a yowl. Grafton's hand moved to his service weapon, fingers finding the familiar grip. Procedure said call for backup. Procedure said wait for animal control. The crying intensified. He grabbed the mag light from his duty belt and ducked through the gap in the fence. The beam cut through scrub oak and palo verde, sending shadows dancing. The ground sloped down into a wash, where flash floods carved channels during monsoon season. His boots crunched on decomposed granite. Each step released the sharp scent of creosote. 20 yards in, his light found them. The leopard lay on her side, right front leg stretched at an unnatural angle. Wire cable bit deep into the flesh above her paw, the kind of snare researchers used in the 90s for big cat population studies. The metal stake had been driven deep, probably years ago, forgotten when the program lost funding. Around her neck, a collar hung loose, its plastic housing cracked. Electronics long dead. 2 cubs pressed against her belly, maybe 10 days old, eyes barely open. Their spotted coats were still fuzzy with infant fur. One nursed weakly, the other cried. The mother's head snapped toward the light, her lips pulled back. But the snarl that should have come out emerged as a wheeze. How long had she been here? Her ribs showed through her coat. The trapped leg had swollen to twice normal size. Flesh purple-black where circulation had been cut off. Flies clustered on the wound. Grafton keyed his shoulder radio. "Dispatch, Unit 7, I've got a situation here. Specify 7?" The leopard's golden eyes tracked his movement. Her free paw flexed, claws extending and retracting. Even weakened, even to dying. She could probably tear his throat out if he got close enough. Large cat, trapped, injured. 2 offspring present. Copy, 7. Animal control won't be available until morning shift. Advise you maintain distance and she'll be dead by morning. Silence on the radio. Then, that's not your call. 7. The leopard made a sound deep in her chest, not aggressive, almost questioning. Her eyes moved from Grafton to her cubs, back to Grafton. The nursing cub had stopped moving. She nudged it with her nose. It stirred, made a small sound, went still again. Grafton stepped closer. The leopard's ears flattened against her skull. He stopped, held his hands out, palms forward, universal gesture. No threat here. Did big cats understand that? Did it matter? 7, please, advise your status. He turned the radio volume down. Not off. That would trigger a welfare check, just low enough to ignore. The leopard hadn't moved, but her breathing had changed. Faster, shallower. Her free paw pressed against the ground, trying to shift position. The trapped leg didn't respond at all. Gangrene. Probably. Even if he freed her, that leg was gone. The second cub started crying again, hungry. The mother's eyes closed, opened, closed again. Her body shuddered. Grafton set the flashlight on a rock, angled to illuminate the scene without blinding her. He moved toward his patrol car. Slow, deliberate, no sudden movements. The wire cutters were in the trunk, part of the standard equipment kit, heavy duty, meant for fence repairs after drunk drivers plowed through ranch barriers. Footsteps on gravel made him freeze. A figure emerged from the darkness. Winston Caldwell, shotgun cradled in his arms. The rancher's face was deeply lined, weathered like old leather. His eyes took in the scene, the leopard, the cubs, Grafton with the wire cutters. "That's my lady, she's on." Winston's voice carried no emotion, just fact. "Winston, my land, my call." The rancher stepped past Grafton, studying the trapped cat. "Lost 2 calves this month. Probably her. She's been trapped for days. Couldn't have taken your calves." Winston's jaw worked like he was chewing tobacco, though Grafton knew he'd quit years ago. "Maybe," maybe not. The leopard's eyes opened, focused on Winston, on the gun, her body tensed, a last surge of maternal instinct overriding everything else. She tried to curl around her cubs, protect them with her own flesh. The movement pulled the wire tighter. Fresh blood welled around the cable. "She's got babies," Grafton said. "I can see that. Week old, maybe less." "I can see that, too." Winston shifted the shotgun, not quite pointing it, not quite lowering it either. His finger wasn't on the trigger, but it wasn't far away. "You know what today is, Grafton?" The question caught him off guard. "Tuesday. 10 years. Winston's voice cracked it slightly. 10 years since Tommy. Anniversary was yesterday. But who's counting?" He laughed, bitter and short. "Me? Apparently, every damn day." The leopard made another sound, weaker than before. One cub had stopped crying. The other barely moved. Their mother's breathing grew more labored. Each inhale a visible effort. Winston raised the shotgun. The shotgun's barrel caught moonlight as Winston brought it to his shoulder. The click of the safety disengaging cut through the desert silence. "Winston, wait!" Grafton stepped between the gun and the leopard. His shadow fell across her spotted coat. "Just wait! Move, Grafton! She's already dying. Look at her!" Winston's eyes stayed on the iron sights. "That's why I'm doing this. End it clean." The leopard's breathing rattled. Each exhale sent small puffs of dust from the ground near her nose. Her eyes had gone glassy, unfocused. But her body still curved around the cubs. The one that had been nursing hadn't moved in minutes. The other made small sounds, pushing against its mother's belly with tiny paws. "You lost 2 calves," Grafton said. "She's been trapped here at least 3 days, maybe 4. Legs gone necrotic. She couldn't have killed anything." The gun didn't waver. "Then another cat did." "What tracks did you find?" Winston's jaw muscle twitched. "Didn't look close." "You always look close. Your daddy taught you tracking when you were 6. You told me that yourself." "Things change." "No. You saw tracks. But they weren't cat tracks." Grafton kept his voice level, matter of fact. "What were they?" "Winston boot prints, tire marks. Someone's been on your land." But it wasn't her. The shotgun dropped an inch. Winston's breathing had gone rough. "Doesn't matter. She's suffering. So let me end the suffering. Let me cut her free first." "Why?" Grafton didn't have an answer that made sense, not one he could put into words. The leopard's eyes had found his face, held there, something in that gaze, not pleading. Animals didn't plead. But there was recognition of what? Another creature in pain. Sarah watched leopards on TV, or he heard himself say, last week before she died. Could barely keep her eyes open, but she watched a whole documentary about snow leopards. Said they were beautiful. Said they were alone. His throat closed on the last word. Winston lowered the gun completely. Tommy loved big cats. The words came out cracked, like they'd been trapped for years. His room, posters everywhere, lions, tigers, leopards. Said he wanted to be a wildlife biologist, save endangered species. A harsh sound escaped him. Maybe a laugh, maybe something else. 17 years old, thought he could save the world. The larger cub made a sound, not quite a cry, more like a question. Its eyes weren't fully open yet, just slits of blue that would turn gold in a few weeks, if it lived that long. The gun went off, Winston continued, speaking to the darkness beyond Grafton's shoulder. Nobody's fault. His friend Jeremy was climbing through the fence. Rifle got caught. Safety was off. 1 in a million accident. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Tommy was standing right there, 3 feet away. If he'd been looking at birds like usual, Tracking something in the brush, he'd have been fine. But he turned to help Jeremy. The leopard's breathing changed, became more labored. Her free paw scraped at the dirt, trying to pull herself closer to the cubs. The trapped leg was dead weight, purple-black and swollen like a grotesque balloon. "I found him," Winston said. Held him while he went, blood everywhere. His eyes stayed open, looking at me, and I kept saying, "It's okay. You're okay." But we both knew I was lying. Grafton moved slowly, picked up the wire cutters from where he'd dropped them. "This trap's old. Research program ended in 90K. Nobody from Game and Fish would leave it active." Winston knelt beside him, examining the snare mechanism. His fingers traced the cable, found where it connected to the stake. "This isn't standard. Look, someone modified it, reinforced. And here," he pointed to scratches on the metal, "fresh tool marks. Someone reset this recently. Poachers. Has to be. Legal trappers wouldn't use old research equipment." Winston looked at the collar on the leopard's neck. They probably tracked her with that dead collar's last known signal, set snares around the territory. The leopard's eyes had closed. Her sides still moved, but barely. The smaller cub had gone completely still. The larger one pushed against its sibling, trying to wake it. "She came here to den," Grafton said. "Somewhere safe to have her babies. Walked right into the trap." Winston stood, walked to his truck parked up the slope. He came back with a tarp, a coil of rope, and a different gun, a tranquilizer rifle. "Doc Chen, veterinarian, over in Summer Haven. She doesn't ask questions. We get this cat free, stabilized. Maybe she's got a chance. That leg's gone. Winston, even if we save her, she can't hunt deer, can't survive in the wild." "Then we figure something else out." Winston loaded a tranquilizer dart. "My barn's empty. Has been for years. You want to harbor a leopard, a wounded leopard with cubs. I want to do something that matters, something Tommy would have—" His voice broke. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Something that isn't about loss." The tranquilizer rifle made a soft pneumatic hiss. The dart hit the leopard's shoulder. She jerked, eyes opening briefly, then slowly relaxing as the drug took effect. Her breathing deepened, steadied. "Help me cut this," Winston said, kneeling by the snare. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before she wakes up." They worked in silence, cutting through the reinforced cable. The wire parted with a metallic snap. The leopard's leg fell free, clearly destroyed, flesh torn, bone visible through the wound. The smell hit them both, rotting meat and infection. "Jesus!" Winston breathed. "She'll lose it," Grafton said. "Even Doc Chen can't save that, but maybe she can save her." They wrapped the leopard in the tarp. Careful with her destroyed leg, she weighed less than she should, ribs prominent under her coat. The larger cub cried when they moved her, scrambling after its mother. The smaller one didn't move at all. Winston picked up the still cub, held it to his ear. "There's a heartbeat, barely, but it's there." Grafton cradled the crying cub against his chest. It weighed almost nothing, maybe 3 pounds. Its claws, tiny but sharp, caught in his uniform shirt. The sound it made vibrated through his rib cage, a desperate call for comfort that transcended species. "Your truck or mine?" Winston asked. "Mine has a cage in back, safer for transport." They loaded the unconscious leopard carefully. Winston held both cubs, while Grafton drove, the patrol car's suspension groaning over the rough trail back to the barn. The radio crackled constantly, dispatch trying to raise him. He turned it off completely. "This is insane," Grafton said. "We could both lose everything. You know that, right?" Winston didn't answer. He was focused on the smaller cub, rubbing its chest with his thumb. trying to stimulate breathing. Come on, little one. Your mama fought to keep you alive. Don't quit now. The barn loomed ahead, a dark shape against darker mountains. Grafton pulled inside, out of sight from the road. The building smelled of old hay and machine oil, abandonment and possibility. Winston had already started setting up a makeshift den in an empty stall, hay bales for walls. The tarp is flooring. There's a heat lamp in the tack room. Get it. Grafton found it, dusty but functional. When he returned, Winston was on his phone. Patricia, it's Winston Caldwell. I know it's late. I need you at my place now. No, not cattle. Something else. Just bring your surgical kit, all of it. He hung up, met Grafton's eyes. Doc Chen's 20 minutes out. The leopard had stirred, a low rumble in her chest, not quite conscious, but coming around. Her remaining good paw flexed, claws extending. What if she wakes up before? A sound outside cut him off. Vehicle engines, multiple. Headlights swept across the barn walls, through gaps in the siding. Winston grabbed his shotgun. Grafton drew his service weapon. 3 trucks pulled up outside. Doors slammed. Voices carried through the night air, not speaking English. Someone followed us, Winston whispered. The barn door rattled. Someone was testing the lock. The barn door rattled harder. Metal hinges creaked. Winston moved to the small window, staying low. His knuckles were white on the shotgun stock. 3 trucks, he whispered. Maybe 8 men. They're spreading out. Grafton's radio lay silent on his belt. He turned it off completely. No backup coming. The leopard made a sound, her head lifting slightly. The tranquilizer was wearing off faster than expected. A voice outside, accented English. We know you're in there. We tracked the collar signal. Just want the cats. Nobody needs to get hurt. The smaller cub twitched in Winston's jacket pocket, where he'd placed it for warmth. Still alive, but barely. The larger one pressed against its mother's side, mewling. How'd they track a dead collar? Winston muttered. Probably has a passive RFID chip. They'd need to be close. But Grafton stopped. Footsteps on the barn's east side. They're surrounding us. The leopard's eyes opened fully. Pupils dilated from the drugs, but aware. She tried to lift her head, saw her cubs, made a low sound in her throat. Her destroyed leg dragged as she attempted to curl around them. Easy, Mama, Winston said softly. Easy. The front door shook. Someone was working on the lock with tools. Grafton checked his weapon. 15 rounds plus 1 in the chamber. Winston's shotgun held 5 shells. Not enough if this went bad. Headlights swept across the barn again. Another vehicle arriving. Grafton's chest tightened until he heard the engine, distinctive knock of Doc Chen's ancient land cruiser. Patricia's here, Winston said. Outside. Voices rose. An argument. Doc Chen's voice cut through, sharp and authoritative. This is private property. You're trespassing. Lady, mind your business. I am minding my business. Mr. Caldwell called me about a veterinary emergency. You're preventing me from treating an animal in distress, which violates state law. What animal? That's confidential. Now, move your vehicles or I call the sheriff. Laughter. Go ahead. Call whoever you want. The leopard struggled to sit up. Blood seeped through the tarp from her mangled leg. Her breathing was labored, but her eyes stayed fixed on the barn door. Maternal instinct overriding injury, drugs, everything. Grafton made a decision. He pulled out his phone, not the radio, called Jake Martinez directly. Grafton, where the hell are you? Dispatch is Jake. Listen, I'm at the Caldwell Ranch. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Armed trespassers. Multiple vehicles. Send backup, but quiet. No sirens. Are you in danger? Not yet. 5 minutes, Jake said, and hung up. The lock broke. The door swung open. 3 men entered, flashlights sweeping the barn's interior. The beams found the Leopard immediately. There she is. The lead man was tall, weathered face, expensive boots, not local. 3-year-old female, worth $40,000 to the right buyer. 50 if she's pregnant or nursing. She's injured. Doc Chen pushed past them. Medical bag in hand. That leg's necrotic. She needs immediate surgery. Not our problem. The man gestured to his companions. Load her up. Winston raised the shotgun. No. 3 pistols appeared, all pointed at Winston. The lead man smiled. Old man, you don't want to die over a cat. Maybe I do. Winston's voice was steady. Maybe I'm tired of people taking things that don't belong to them. The Leopard snarled. Weak but unmistakable. One of the men stepped toward her. She snapped at him, teeth clicking on air. He jumped back, cursing in Spanish. Tranca against up. The leader ordered. Can't, another replied. Too soon. Could kill her. Then net her. They produced a heavy canvas net. The Leopard tried to stand. Collapsed. Her good paw scraped at the hay, trying to drag herself between the men and her cubs. The larger cub cried louder. The smaller one finally stirred. A tiny movement that made Winston's breath catch. Both cubs alive, the leader noted. Extra 20,000. Grafton stepped forward, badge visible. You're under arrest for poaching, trespassing. And the leader laughed. 1 cop against 8 of us. He pulled out his phone, showed a video. You want to see something interesting? Footage from 2 hours ago. You and this rancher loading that Leopard, taking it from the preserve. That's theft of protected wildlife, federal crime. She was dying in a trap. Trap we didn't set. But who's going to believe that? The cop who turned off his radio, who didn't follow protocol. The man smiled. Here's what happens. You walk away. We take the cats. Everyone forgets tonight happened. Blue and red lights flickered through the barn windows. No sirens. But the lights were unmistakable. Multiple units. The leader's smile faded. You called backup. I called the law. Grafton said. Jake Martinez entered first, weapon drawn. 3 more officers followed. Grafton, you good? Better now. The poachers looked at each other. 8 against 5 cops. The math had changed. This is a misunderstanding, the leader said smoothly. We're with wildlife recovery. These men illegally removed an endangered animal from federal land. Jake looked at Grafton. That true. She was dying in an illegal snare. We performed an emergency rescue. Where's your permit? The leader demanded. Where's your authorization? Doc Chen knelt beside the Leopard, already pulling supplies from her bag. Authorization. This animal has maybe an hour before sepsis kills her. You want to debate paperwork while she dies? The Leopard's breathing had gone shallow. Her eyes were closing. Doc, Winston said urgently. I need space. Everyone out except Winston and Officer Hale. We're not leaving the cats, the leader said. Jake stepped forward. Yeah, you are outside. All of you. We'll sort this out, but not in here. The standoff stretched taut. One of the poachers shifted, hand moving toward his waistband. Jake's partner, Officer Collins, noticed. Hands where I can see them. This isn't over, the leader said. Those cats are worth more than your annual salary. Cop, all your salaries combined. Outside, Jake repeated. They filed out slowly. The leader stopped at the door, looked back at Grafton. You have no idea what you've stepped into. When they were gone, Doc Chen was already working. V-line in, antibiotics pushing. This leg has to come off. Now. Can you do that here? Grafton asked. Have to. Moving her again will kill her. She looked at Winston. I need boiling water, clean towels, and every lamp you have. Winston ran for the house. Grafton held the cubs while Doc Chen prepped for surgery. The larger cub settled against his chest, tiny heart hammering against his palm. The smaller one barely breathed. This is insane, Doc Chen muttered, shaving the area around the destroyed leg. Jail time insane. Achik. I know. So why? Grafton looked at the leopard's face, saw her eyes track to her cubs in his hands, even dying, even in agony, checking on them. I don't know. But he did. It was the same reason Winston came back, the same reason Doc Chen drove out at midnight. Sometimes you reached a point where doing the right thing mattered more than doing the legal thing. 2 days later, the leopard, Sage, Winston had started calling her, lay in the barn stall. Minus her right front leg, the amputation had taken 3 hours. Doc Chen had stayed all night, monitoring vitals, adjusting medications. The cubs nursed successfully for the first time since the rescue. Both of them, even the smaller one. She'll live, Doc Chen announced, exhausted. But she can never go back to the wild. 3-legged leopard can't hunt. Winston was already modifying the barn. Doesn't have to go back. Shupka. You can't keep a leopard, Winston. Watch me. The legal battle was brewing. The poachers had filed complaints. Game and Fish wanted the leopard transferred to their facility. The county was investigating Grafton for abandoning his patrol, turning off his radio, misuse of authority. But for now, in the quiet barn, Sage nursed her cubs while Winston and Grafton took turns standing guard. Emily's coming down, Grafton said, checking his phone. Wants to know what I've done now. Jake, too. Probably. Grafton watched Sage clean the larger cub with her rough tongue. He covered for me with dispatch. Said I was pursuing suspects. Good man. He's in love with my daughter. You okay with that? Grafton considered. Yeah, I am. The smaller cub made a sound, stronger than before, not quite a proper cry, but getting there. Sage pulled it closer, protective, even with 3 legs. 1 week later, the barn had become a makeshift rehabilitation center. Doc Chen visited daily. Winston had installed cameras, better locks, an alarm system. The cubs' eyes were fully open now, bright gold like their mother's. Emily arrived on day 7, furious. Dad, what the hell were you thinking? She stood in the barn doorway, hands on hips, looking so much like Sarah that Grafton's chest hurt. Jake stood behind her, trying to look official, despite the concern on his face. M, you turned off your radio. You stole evidence. You're harboring an endangered animal? I saved her life. You risked your career, your pension, for what? A cat. Sage lifted her head at the raised voices. The cubs tumbled over each other, playing with a rope toy Winston had made. Emily stepped closer to the stall, anger fading as she watched. The smaller cub, the one they'd thought wouldn't make it, pounced on its sibling, both rolling in the hay. They were dying, Grafton said quietly. All 3 of them. Emily knelt by the stall. Sage watched her, wary but not aggressive. She's beautiful. Your mom would have loved her. Emily's eyes filled. Don't use Mom to justify this. I'm not, but it's true. Jake cleared his throat. Grafton, there's news. Those poachers, they're connected to something bigger. International trafficking ring. FBI's interested now. That helps us. Maybe, if you're witnesses instead of perpetrators. Winston emerged from the feed room with the bottles. Supplemental feeding time. Cubs aren't getting enough from Mama yet. He handed a bottle to Emily without asking. She took it automatically, then looked at it like she didn't know what to do. Just hold it steady." Winston demonstrated with the second bottle. "They'll do the rest." The cubs attacked the bottles eagerly. Emily's face softened as the smaller one wrapped its paws around the bottle, sucking greedily. "We can't keep them," she said. "It's not legal. It's not safe." "I know," Grafton said. But watching his daughter feed a leopard cub while Sage observed with calm trust, he wondered if legal and safe were the only things that mattered. 2 weeks later, the town knew. Impossible to keep secret when Doc Chen needed supplies, when delivery trucks brought meat, when the sheriff came by twice asking questions. The reaction split predictably. Ranchers wanted the leopard gone. Conservation groups wanted her in a facility. Mayor Thompson called for Grafton's immediate termination. The town meeting was scheduled for tonight. "You should stay away," Jake advised, adjusting his uniform. "Let me handle it. It's my mess," Grafton said. "Our mess," Winston corrected, loading his truck. "And we're going?" The community center was packed. Bill Crawford and his rancher coalition took up the front rows. Behind them, families, curious citizens, a few reporters who'd gotten wind of the story. Mayor Thompson banged his gavel. "We're here to discuss the illegal harboring of a dangerous animal on the Caldwell property." Bill Crawford stood immediately. "There's nothing to discuss. The cat goes today." Murmurs of agreement from his section. Doc Chen stood. "That leopard is still recovering from major surgery. Moving her now would be cruel." "Cruel, huh?" Crawford laughed. "What about my livelihood, my cattle?" "She's got 3 legs," Winston said. "She's not taking anybody's cattle. What about when the cubs grow, you planning to keep 3 leopards?" The room erupted, shouting from both sides. Mayor Thompson banged his gavel repeatedly. A new voice cut through the chaos. "May I speak?" Everyone turned. An elderly Native American woman stood in the back. Grafton recognized her. Maria Yazzie, from the Tribal Council. "The tribal nation has been monitoring this situation," she said, walking forward. "These leopards were on sovereign land when trapped. Technically, they fall under our jurisdiction." Silence. "Furthermore," she continued, "Mr. Caldwell's ranch borders our territory. We're prepared to offer sanctuary." Mayor Thompson sputtered. "You can't just—" "We can, and we will." Maria looked at Grafton. Officer Hale showed compassion. "That's rare these days." The tribal council voted, "The leopards can stay." Crawford jumped up. "This is ridiculous." "No," Maria said calmly. "Ridiculous is grown men afraid of an injured mother and 2 babies." She turned to leave, stopped at the door. "Mr. Caldwell, Officer Hale, bring them whenever they're ready. We have space prepared." After she left, the meeting dissolved into chaos. But Grafton felt something ease in his chest. A path forward, unexpected but real. In the truck afterward, Winston was quiet. Finally, "Tribal land? Didn't see that coming. She'll be safe there." "Yeah." Winston stared at the road. Tommy would have liked this outcome. They drove back to the barn where Emily and Jake were watching the cubs play. Sage lay on her side, content to let the humans babysit while she rested. "How did it go?" Emily asked. "Better than expected," Grafton said, then explained about the tribal offer. Jake whistled. "Smart. Federal government can't touch them on sovereign land." Emily was feeding the smaller cub again. It had gained weight, fur filling out. "When would you move them?" "When Doc Chen says Sage is ready. Maybe another week." The larger cub wandered over to Grafton, batting at his bootlaces. He picked it up, surprised as always by how soft the fur was, how it rumbled like a tiny motor when content. "I need to tell you something," Emily said. "I'm thinking about moving back, opening a practice here." Grafton's heart skipped. "What about Phoenix?" "Phoenix is fine, but this—" She gestured at the barn. The leopards. Jake, trying not to look too pleased. This feels important. The cub in Grafton's hands yawned, showing tiny fangs that would one day be lethal. For now, it just wanted to sleep. A car pulled up outside. Doc Chen entered, but her face was grim. "We have a problem. Game and Fish got a court order. They're coming tomorrow to seize the leopards." The court order lay on Winston's kitchen table like a death warrant. 3 days to comply. Transfer the leopards to state custody or face arrest. "We move them tonight," Winston said. "To the tribal land?" Doc Chen shook her head. "Sage isn't ready. The amputation site is still healing. Stress could cause hemorrhaging. Better than a cage at Game and Fish." Grafton traced the official seal on the document. "They'll put her down. Three-legged predator has no value to them." Emily pulled up satellite photos on her phone. "Shortest route to tribal land is 12 miles through the canyon. Rough road." "Too rough," Jake said. "That land cruiser won't make it with a wounded leopard." The kitchen went quiet. Outside, coyotes yipped in the distance. The wall clock read 9 p.m. Winston's phone buzzed. Text from Maria Yazzie. "Transport ready when you are. Council standing by. 3 days." But Grafton's gut told him they didn't have 3 days. The poachers had been too quiet since the town meeting. Men who dealt in $40,000 cats didn't just walk away. Day 21, 2:00 a.m. Grafton woke to his phone vibrating. Winston calling. "Get here." Now the line went dead. Grafton rolled out of bed, pulled on yesterday's clothes. His service weapon sat on the nightstand. He strapped it on, grabbed a flashlight, headed for his truck. The drive to Winston's took 12 minutes. Should have taken 20. But Grafton ran the stop signs. The barn lights were on, unusual for this hour. Winston's truck sat at an odd angle, like he'd stopped in a hurry. Grafton parked, approached carefully. The barn door stood open. Inside, Winston knelt by Sage's stall, rifle across his knees. "What happened?" Winston held up a dart. "Found this in the wall. Tranquilizer. Professional grade. They were here 20 minutes ago. Motion sensors woke me. By the time I got out here, they were gone." Winston's hands shook slightly. But they'll be back." This was reconnaissance. Estelle was awake, alert, her remaining front leg pressed against the ground, ready to rise despite the healing amputation. The cubs huddled against her belly. "We need to move them," Grafton said. "Doc said—" "I know what Doc said, but they're coming back with more men, better equipment." Grafton pulled out his phone to call Jake, but there was no signal. "Tower's down." Winston checked his phone. Same thing. The landline in the barn office was dead too. "They cut communications." Winston's face had gone pale. This is happening now. Headlights swept across the barn walls. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. Grafton counted 3 sets, maybe 4. No sirens, not law enforcement. "Back door," Winston said. "They'll have it covered. Then we make a stand here." The vehicles stopped outside. Doors opened and closed. Footsteps on gravel, spreading out to surround the barn. Grafton counted at least 8 men, maybe more. "Officer Hale." The voice was accented, Eastern European. "Mr. Caldwell, let's discuss this like civilized men." Grafton knew that voice from the intelligence briefings Jake had shared. Marcus Volkov, not just a poacher, a major player in exotic animal trafficking, connected to cartels, oligarchs, private collectors who paid millions for rare predators. "Nothing to discuss," Grafton called back. "I disagree, Jusitz. You have something I want. I have something you need, which is your lives." The barn had 4 windows, 2 doors. Grafton moved to the east window while Winston covered the west. Through the glass, he saw men with rifles taking positions. Professional formation, military trained. "3 minutes to decide," Volkov said. Then we come in. Sage struggled to stand. The drugs from her daily pain medication made her movements sluggish, but her eyes burned bright. She knew predators when she smelled them. "Easy, girl," Winston whispered. The larger cub made a sound, not quite a roar, more like a squeaky growl. It stood between its mother and the door, all 15 pounds of spotted fury. "Brave little thing," Winston said. Just like glass shattered, smoke grenade rolled across the floor, hissing gray clouds, another through the west window. Grafton's eyes immediately burned, throat closing, tear gas mixed with something else, something that made his head swim. Winston dropped to his knees, coughing. His rifle fell from his hands. The doors burst open simultaneously. Men in tactical gear poured in. Grafton tried to draw his weapon, but his fingers wouldn't work right. The gas was more than tear gas. Sedative, maybe. Or someone hit him from behind. He went down hard, face pressing into the hay, boot on his back, grinding him down. His weapon was yanked from its holster. Through watering eyes, he saw them approaching Sage's stall with catch poles and nets. She tried to stand but collapsed, the amputation site bleeding where she'd torn stitches. "Careful with the merchandise." Volkov entered wearing a gas mask. "She's worth nothing dead." 2 men cornered the cubs. The smaller one tried to hide behind its sibling. The larger one hissed, swiped with tiny claws. A catchpole looped around its neck, lifted it squealing off the ground. "Stop," Grafton gasped. "They're just babies." Volkov knelt beside him, through the mask. His eyes were cold blue. "Babies, worth 20,000 each." Winston tried to crawl toward his rifle. A boot stomped on his hand. Grafton heard bones crack. Winston screamed. "Old man should have taken my first offer," Volkov said. "Would have been cleaner." They dragged Sage out on a tarp, her remaining legs scraping uselessly at the ground. Blood trail marked her path. The cubs were shoved into a carrier, crying for their mother. "Load them up," Volkov ordered. "The buyer wants them in Mexico by tomorrow night." "What about these 2? Volkov pulled out a pistol, suppressor attached. "Unfortunate barn fire. 2 old fools died trying to save animals. Tragic story." He pointed the gun at Winston first. The old rancher looked at Grafton. Something passing between them. Not goodbye. Something else. Winston's eyes flicked to the hayloft. Grafton remembered. The motion sensors Winston had installed weren't just alarms. They triggered recording devices. Everything was being filmed, uploaded to cloud storage. If they had signal, which they didn't, unless... Volkov's finger tightened on the trigger. Sage roared. Not weak, not drugged, full-throated and furious. She'd somehow gotten to her feet, 3 legs, wounds bleeding but standing. One of the men had gotten too close to the cub carrier. Her teeth found his calf. Crunching through tactical pants into flesh, the man screamed, tried to pull away. Sage held on, using her weight to drag him down. "Shoot it!" Volkov swung his pistol toward Sage. "No!" One of his men grabbed his arm. "You kill her! We lose everything!" Chaos. Men shouting, the injured one screaming, Sage dragging herself toward her cubs despite everything. Winston rolled sideways, grabbed a pitchfork from the wall. Not much of a weapon, but he drove it into the knee of the man standing over him. Grafton pushed up, tackled the nearest man. They went down together, rolling in the hay. His vision was still blurred, movements sluggish, but adrenaline burned through the sedative. A rifle fired. The sound exploded through the barn. Winston fell, clutching his shoulder. Blood spread across his shirt. "Enough!" Volkov shouted. But Sage wasn't done. She'd released the first man, turned on another who tried to grab the carrier. Her claws, the ones on her remaining front paw, raked across his face. He stumbled back, hands covering the wounds. Volkov shot her. The dart hit her flank. tranquilizer, not bullet. She staggered, tried to reach the cubs, collapsed inches from the carrier. "Get them out of here," Volkov ordered. "Now." They dragged Sage out, loaded the screaming cubs. Winston was barely conscious, blood pooling beneath him. Grafton crawled to him, pressed his hands against the wound. "Stay with me, Winston. Tommy?" Winston whispered. "Would have fought for them, too." Engines started outside. Grafton heard vehicles pulling away. They were taking Sage and the cubs. After everything, they were taking them. Blue lights flickered through the smoke. Sirens. Jake's voice on a megaphone. "This is the police. Nobody move." Volkov appeared in the doorway, gun raised toward Grafton. "You called them." "How?" Grafton hadn't. But someone had. Emily stood behind Volkov with Winston's shotgun. "I did. Now drop it." Volkov's pistol stayed level, pointed at Grafton's head. The suppressor's barrel looked massive from this angle. Emily stood behind him, Winston's shotgun trembling in her grip. "I said drop it," Emily repeated. "Your hands are shaking," Volkov said without turning. "You've never killed anyone. I have, many times." Jake's voice on the megaphone. "We have the barn surrounded. Come out with your hands visible." Volkov smiled. "Your boyfriend doesn't know you're in here, does he?" What happens when his officers storm in crossfire? Confusion. He tilted his head slightly. "Your father dies first." The shotgun barrel dipped. Emily's breathing was audible, rapid and shallow. Grafton tried to speak, but his throat was raw from the gas. Winston wasn't moving. Blood spreading in an expanding pool. "Emily," Grafton managed. "Shoot him." "She won't," Volkov said. "She's a veterinarian. She saves lives." He started to turn, gun swinging toward Emily. The shotgun fired. Volkov spun sideways, his shot going wide. The bullet punched into the wall inches from Grafton's head. Volkov hit the ground, clutching his thigh where buckshot had torn through muscle. Emily dropped the shotgun, hands covering her mouth. Police flooded in. Jake first, weapon drawn, taking in the scene. Grafton on the ground, Winston bleeding out, Volkov writhing. Medics now. Grafton pointed toward the door. They took them. Sage and the cubs, 3 vehicles, went south. Jake was already on his radio, calling in the direction of flight. Emily knelt beside Winston, pressing her hands against his shoulder wound. Her veterinary training kicked in, checking pulse, evaluating blood loss. "Through and through," she said. "Missed the subclavian artery or he'd be dead already." Paramedics arrived, pushed her aside. They worked on Winston with practiced efficiency. IV lines, pressure bandages, backboard. One checked Grafton, shining a light in his eyes. "Possible concussion? That gas. What was it?" "Don't know." Grafton pushed the medic away. "I'm fine." "Find the Leopards." "Sir, you need to—" "I said I'm fine." He wasn't. His head felt like it might split, but vision still blurred at the edges. But Sage was out there, bleeding, terrified. The cubs crying for their mother. Jake helped him to stand. "Roadblocks are up. We'll find them." Dawn? County Hospital? Grafton sat in the ER waiting room, Emily beside him. His head had been scanned, blood work drawn, mild concussion, traces of ketamine in his system from the gas. Winston was in surgery. 2 hours, the surgeon had said. Touch and go. Jake entered, face grim. "We found one of the vehicles, abandoned off Highway 90, blood in the back. Sage, most likely. Trail leads into the desert, but we lost it in the rocks." He sat down heavily. "There's more. Game and Fish is here, with their court order." A woman in a state uniform entered. Badge identified her as Director Helen Morrison. "Officer Hale, I need to speak with you about the illegally harbored leopards." "They were kidnapped," Emily said. "Stolen by traffickers." "After you failed to comply with state regulations." Morrison's voice was flat, professional. "Those animals should have been in our custody." Now one is injured, possibly dying, and 2 cubs are in the hands of criminals. We saved them, Grafton said. You delayed the inevitable. A 3-legged leopard cannot survive. The humane thing would have been euthanasia. Humane? Emily stood. We watched that mother fight armed men to protect her babies. That's not an animal ready to die. Morrison pulled out a tablet, showed them a video. Security footage from somewhere, grainy, but clear enough. Sage attacking the game and fish handlers who'd tried to cage her cubs a year ago at a different facility. Blood, screaming, chaos. This animal has a history of violence, Morrison said. If we recover her, she'll be put down immediately. You can't. I can and I will. She's been classified as dangerous. The cubs will go to a zoo if they're recovered alive. Morrison turned to leave. Stopped. Officer Hale, you're suspended pending investigation. Mr. Martinez, you're facing the same for filing false reports. I'd suggest you both find lawyers. She left. The waiting room felt smaller, airless. Dad, Emily started. Just don't. A nurse appeared. Mr. Caldwell is out of surgery, stable but critical. He's asking for someone named Grafton. They followed her to recovery. Winston looked small in the hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere. His eyes were barely open, voice a whisper. Did they find them? Not yet, Grafton said. My fault. Should have moved them sooner. Winston? No. Listen. Winston gripped Grafton's wrist with surprising strength. The cameras. In the barn. They uploaded everything before the signal cut. Check my cloud account. He rattled off a password. Everything's there. Volkov, the attack, all of it. His eyes closed. Monitors beeped steadily. Emily pulled out her phone, logged into Winston's account. Files were there, dozens of them. The last one time-stamped 2:23 a.m. This is evidence, she said. This proves everything. Doesn't matter if Sage is dead, Grafton said. Later, Grafton's house. He'd been sent home with pain medication he didn't take. His shoulder blazed where he'd hit the ground, ribs bruised from the boot on his back. Emily made coffee while Jake worked his phone, calling contacts, trying to get information. The news was already running the story. Vigilante cops' exotic pet ring exposed. They had everything wrong, of course, made it sound like Grafton and Winston were the traffickers. Turn it off, Emily said. Grafton muted the TV but kept watching. Footage of the barn, police tape everywhere, interview with Bill Crawford about the danger to his cattle, Mayor Thompson calling for immediate action. Jake's phone rang. He listened, face changing. They found something. The leopards? Blood trail leads to an old mine shaft. Rescue team is heading there now. Grafton stood, grabbed his keys. Let's go. You're suspended. You can't. I don't care. Dad, you can barely stand. She's out there, Emily, hurt, probably dying, definitely terrified. I'm not sitting here while... His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then answered. Officer Hale. Female voice, accented. My name is Natasha. I work for Marcus Volkov. We need to talk about your leopards. If you've hurt them, they're alive. For now. But my employer is unhappy about his leg. He wants compensation. Money? No. Silence. Drop all charges. Destroy the barn footage. In exchange, we leave the cats where you can find them. How do I know they're alive? A sound came through the phone. Cubs crying. Unmistakable. You have 1 hour to decide. I'll call back. The line went dead. Jake was already tracing the call. Bounced through multiple proxies. Could be anywhere. Grafton looked at the muted TV. The news had moved on to weather, but the crawler still read, Dangerous leopard loose in Arizona. We can't make that deal, Jake said. Destroying evidence, dropping charges, that's obstruction of justice. And if we don't, they kill Sage and the cubs. You don't know that. Grafton thought about Sage standing over him, protecting him from Volkov's men. Her eyes, fierce and maternal and utterly fearless despite her wounds. His phone buzzed again, this time a video message. Sage in a cage too small for her to stand, the amputation site bleeding freely. The cubs in a separate carrier, crying. A hand appeared, holding a syringe. 1 hour, Natasha's voice said, or we start with the small one. The video ended. Emily grabbed the phone, replayed it. Wait, look at the background. That wall, that's limestone. And that water stain pattern. You recognize it, maybe. The old Coronado mine. We did a rescue there once, injured hiker. That same limestone formation? She pulled up maps on her tablet. 12 miles south. Abandoned since the 50s. Jake was already calling backup. If we move now, they'll kill them, Grafton said. The second they see police, they'll kill them. So what do we do? Grafton looked at the video again. Sage's eyes were open, watching something off camera, still alert despite everything, still fighting. We don't wait for their call, he said. We go now, just us. Dad, no, you're injured, suspended, and in an hour they'll be dead. He stood, ignoring the pain that shot through his ribs. I'm going, with or without you. Emily and Jake exchanged looks. I'll drive, Jake said. Emily grabbed her medical bag. I'm coming too. They headed for Jake's truck. As they pulled out, Grafton's radio, the one he'd forgotten to turn in, crackled to life. All units, report of gunfire at the old Coronado mine, possible animal attack. Respond with caution. Jake floored it. The Coronado mine entrance gaped black against the hillside. Jake's truck skidded to a stop 20 yards away. No other vehicles visible. But tire tracks in the dust led toward the shaft. Fresh. Grafton climbed out, ribs screaming. The desert heat was already building despite the early hour. A buzzard circled overhead. Patient? Blood. Emily pointed to dark spots on the rocks leading inside. A lot of it, Jake drew his weapon. Could be human or animal. They approached the entrance. The wooden support beams were rotted, sections collapsed. Air flowing from inside carried the smell of bat guano and something else. Copper, fear, sweat, death. A sound from within, metal on rock. Jake raised his hand for silence. They listened, breathing, labored and wet. Human? Police, Jake called. Come out slowly. Movement in the shadows. A man crawled into view. Face shredded by parallel gashes, claw marks. His left arm hung useless, shoulder dislocated. One of Volkov's men from the barn. Help me, he gasped. Blood bubbled from his mouth. She got loose. Where are the leopards? Grafton demanded. The man collapsed, unconscious. Emily checked his pulse. Alive, but he needs an ambulance. Jake was already on his radio. Medical emergency at Coronado Mine. One critical. Grafton moved past them into the mine. The flashlight on his phone carved a narrow beam through the darkness. The shaft angled down, rough-hewn walls closing in. Support timbers groaned overhead. 50 feet in, the passage opened into a larger chamber. His light swept across overturned crates, scattered equipment, a cage, door hanging open, bars bent outward. Blood pooled beneath it. Dad. Wait for backup, Emily called. He kept moving. Deeper into the chamber, his light found another body. This one wasn't moving. Throat torn out. The carrier that had held the cubs lay on its side, door open. A growl so low he felt it more than heard it. Sage stood in the corner, balanced on her 3 legs. The cubs were behind her, pressed against the rock wall. Her muzzle was dark with blood, not hers. Her golden eyes reflected his light, pupils dilated in the darkness. "Hey, girl," Grafton said softly. "It's me." She swayed, caught herself. The amputation site was bleeding again, seeping through makeshift bandages someone had wrapped around it. Probably Natasha, trying to keep the merchandise alive. Jake and Emily entered behind him. Sage's attention snapped to them, lips pulling back. "Don't move," Grafton said. "She's in protection mode." The larger cub poked its head out, saw Grafton, made a small sound, not fear. Recognition. "That's right, little one, you know me." His phone rang. The sound echoed off the cave walls. Sage flinched. "Unknown number," he answered. "Natasha, you weren't supposed to find them yet." Her voice was tight. "The deal's off. Your men are dead, or dying. Not all of them. Volkov is already gone, moved to a medical facility in Mexico." A pause. "You have no idea what you've done. He has connections everywhere. Judges, senators, even—" The line cut to static, then nothing. Jake held up a device. "Signal jammer. We need privacy for what comes next." "Which is?" Jake pulled out his personal phone, showed Grafton the screen, emails, documents, financial records. "I've been investigating since day one. That trap wasn't random. Someone's been mapping Leopard territories for months, selling locations to traffickers." "Who? Look at the signature on these permits." Jake scrolled through documents, every single one approved by the same person. Mayor Thompson's signature on permits for wildlife research that were actually scouting missions, on land use changes that pushed leopards into trap zones, on contracts with shell companies connected to Volkov. "Thompson's been taking money for 2 years," Jake continued. "Crawford, too. They've been systematically driving predators into areas where they could be captured." Emily was examining Sage from a distance. "She needs treatment now. Can't move her like this. She's too defensive. Then we sedate her. No more drugs. Look at her." Grafton stepped closer. Sage tensed, but didn't growl. "She's barely standing as is." His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Photos. Winston's barn from different angles. Timestamps going back months. The last photo showed Tommy's room, taken recently. A journal on the desk, circled in red. Another text. Check the journal. Page 40. "That's Winston's house," Emily said. "Someone's been inside. We need to get back there," Jake said. "This could be a diversion." Sage collapsed. Her legs folded, and she went down hard. The cubs immediately climbed over her, crying. She tried to lift her head. Couldn't. "No, no, no." Emily rushed forward, veterinary instincts overriding caution. She checked Sage's pulse, pupils. "She's going into shock, blood loss and stress. What do you need?" "IV fluids, antibiotics, surgical kit. Everything's in Jake's truck." Jake ran for the supplies. Grafton knelt beside Emily, holding his light steady while she worked. Sage's breathing was shallow, rapid. The cubs pressed against their mother, making distressed sounds. "Stay with us, girl," Grafton whispered. Emily's hands moved quickly, finding a vein, inserting an IV. "This might not be enough. She needs real surgery, not field medicine." Jake returned with the supplies. "Backup's 10 minutes out, and I called Doc Chin. She's coming. 10 minutes might be too long." Sage's eyes found Grafton's face. Even dying, she watched him. Trusting, or just too weak to care anymore? He couldn't tell. Jake's phone rang. He listened, face changing. "That was the hospital. Winston's awake. Says we need to get to his house immediately. Says it's about Tommy. We can't leave Sage. Doc Chen will be here in 5 minutes. Winston says it's urgent, life or death." Grafton looked at Sage, then at Emily, working to save her. His daughter's hands were covered in blood, face set in concentration. "Go," Emily said. "I've got this." Winston's house. 20 minutes later, the front door stood open. Jake entered first, weapon drawn. The house was undisturbed except for Tommy's room. Someone had been through it carefully, respectfully even. The journal lay open on the bed. Grafton picked it up, found page 4. "Dad thinks I don't know about the crying, but I hear him every night. He blames himself for everything. Mom leaving, the ranch failing, me wanting to study animals instead of raising cattle. He doesn't understand that watching him tend injured calves, seeing his gentleness with frightened animals, that's what made me want to be a conservationist. I wish I could tell him that his compassion is his strength, not his weakness. Maybe someday he'll save something that matters, and he'll understand what I see in him." The next page had drawings, leopards, sketched with surprising skill. Notes about territories, hunting patterns, breeding seasons. Tommy had been studying them for years. Jake's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number says check the attic. The pull-down stairs were already extended. They climbed up into dusty heat. Boxes everywhere, labeled in Tommy's handwriting, leopard research, conservation plans, wildlife corridor proposal. He had it all figured out, Jake said, opening a box, maps, documents, detailed plans for converting ranch land into wildlife passages. This is professional-level work. Another box held photographs. Tommy with various animals. One showed him at maybe 15, holding a rescued hawk. The last photo was different. Tommy and Winston together, both smiling, dated 1 week before the accident. Grafton's phone rang. "Doc Chen, Sage is stable. Barely. I've got her on full life support. The cubs are okay, just scared." A pause. There's something else. State police just arrived with Director Morrison. Game and fish. She's ordering me to euthanize Sage immediately. Says she has authority. "Stall her! We're coming!" They ran for the truck. Jake drove while Grafton called the only person he could think of who might help. Maria Yazzie answered on the second ring. "Ms. Yazzie, this is Grafton Hale. The Leopards." "I know. Morrison already called me. Threatened legal action if we interfere. Can you stop her?" "Not directly. But I've made some calls. National Geographic wants exclusive rights to document this story. They're offering significant funding for leopard conservation. Morrison might listen to that." How long before they arrive? Their team is in Phoenix. 2 hours. We don't have 2 hours. Then you need to buy time. Back at the mine, 3 state vehicles, 2 ambulances, and a game and fish truck crowded the entrance. Director Morrison stood beside a van equipped with euthanasia equipment. Officer Hale, or should I say, former Officer Hale. Morrison held up paperwork. "Your suspension is now termination. You have no authority here." Doc Chen had Sage on a makeshift operating table in the back of her Land Cruiser. Hvu's running, monitors beeping. The cubs were in a carrier beside her, crying. "She's responding to treatment," Doc Chen said. "Heart rate stabilizing?" "Irrelevant," Morrison signaled her team. "Remove the veterinarian. Prepare the euthanasia protocol." Jake stepped forward. "Director Morrison, I've been investigating a trafficking ring connected to these leopards. We have evidence implicating city officials." "Not my concern." "It should be." Jake showed her his phone. "These emails show your department issued permits for the fake research that led to these leopards being trapped." Morrison's face went pale. "Those permits were legitimate. We had no knowledge." "Then you'll want to cooperate with the federal investigation that's about to happen." Emily emerged from the Land Cruiser, hands bloody but steady. "She's stable enough to transport. We can move her to the tribal sanctuary." "No." Morrison's voice was firm but less certain. She attacked humans. Protocol is clear. A new voice interrupted. Actually, protocol is changing. Everyone turned. A woman in a suit stood beside a van marked with the National Geographic logo. Rebecca Stone, executive producer. We're prepared to fund a complete rehabilitation program for these leopards, including medical care and sanctuary maintenance. We can. Rebecca handed Morrison a tablet. That's a call from the Secretary of the Interior. He's very interested in this story. Suggests you might want to reconsider your position. Morrison looked at the tablet, then at Sage fighting for life. The cubs crying for their mother. This is highly irregular. So, is a police officer risking everything to save an injured animal? Rebecca said. Sometimes irregular is exactly what we need. Grafton's phone buzzed. Message from Winston. Watching on the news from his hospital bed, Tommy would be proud. Another message followed. A photo from the barn's security camera that Grafton hadn't seen before, the moment Sage stood over him, protecting him from Volkov. But what struck him wasn't her defensive posture. It was her eyes. Even in the grainy footage, even through the pain and fear, there was something there. Recognition. Not just of a creature who'd helped her. Recognition of another parent who'd do anything to protect what they loved. Director Morrison, Grafton said, I'll make you a deal. You're in no position to make deals. I have video evidence of state officials taking bribes, emails showing your department's involvement. However unwitting, that all goes public unless what? Unless you help us save her. Morrison looked at the gathered crowd. Media vans were arriving. The story was already beyond containment. If she attacks anyone, ever again, she won't. Grafton looked at Sage, now breathing steadily under Doc Chen's care. She's done fighting. She just wants to raise her cubs. Morrison was about to respond when her phone rang. She listened, face darkening. What do you mean he escaped? How does someone with a gunshot wound to the leg escape federal custody? Jake and Grafton exchanged looks. Volkov was free. Day 30, dawn, tribal land. The desert air carried the smell of sage and creosote. Grafton stood at the entrance to the sanctuary, watching Doc Chen check Sage's vitals one last time. The leopard's amputation site had healed into a pink scar. She'd learned to move on 3 legs with surprising grace, using her tail for balance. Heart rate normal, Doc Chen said. Weight up 12 pounds. She's ready. The sanctuary stretched for 50 acres, bordered by natural rock formations. The tribal council had installed motion cameras, feeding stations, a spring-fed pool. In the distance, the mountains rose purple against the lightening sky. Winston sat in a wheelchair, Jake pushing him. His shoulder was still wrapped, arm in a sling, but his eyes were clear. Emily stood beside them, holding the carrier with both cubs. They'd grown in the past week, eyes bright gold, beginning to explore. You sure about this? Emily asked her father. Once we let them go, that's it. That was always the plan. Maria Yazzie approached with 2 other tribal elders. She carried a bundle of white sage, smoke drifting in the still air. In our tradition, all creatures are relations. Today, we welcome new family. The cameras were rolling. Rebecca Stone and her National Geographic crew had been documenting everything for 3 days. But they stayed back, using long lenses, trying not to intrude on the moment. Grafton opened the carrier. The cubs tumbled out, immediately running to their mother. Sage sniffed them thoroughly, then began grooming the smaller one with her rough tongue. The larger cub tried to nurse, but Sage nudged it toward the feeding station where Doc Chen had left fresh meat. She's teaching them independence, Doc Chen observed. Good sign. As Winston struggled to his feet, Jake steadying him. Tommy wrote something once about how saving one animal might seem pointless in the bigger picture, but he said every life that continues is a victory against entropy. Entropy, Jake asked. The tendency toward disorder, death, nothingness. Winston's voice was rough. That boy was too smart for his own good, but he was right. Look at him. Zoba had moved to the pool, drinking deeply. The cubs followed, splashing in the shallows. Water droplets caught the early sunlight like scattered diamonds. Morrison had come. Though she stood apart from the group, she'd officially closed the case, declaring the Leopards permanent wards of the tribal nation. The investigation into Thompson and Crawford was ongoing, but both had resigned their positions. Officer Hale, Morrison said. Former Officer Hale. The department is willing to discuss reinstatement. Not interested. You sure your pension? Will be smaller, I know. Grafton watched Sage teaching her cubs to climb the rocks. Some things matter more than money. Morrison left without another word. The sun climbed higher. The cubs discovered a butterfly, chasing it through the grass with clumsy leaps. Sage watched them, alert but relaxed. We should go, Maria said gently. Let them adjust without us. They walked back toward the vehicles. At the gate, Grafton turned for one last look. Sage stood on a boulder, surveying her new territory. She looked back at him, held his gaze for a long moment, then turned away. 3 months later. Grafton parked his old truck at the observation point. The binoculars were on the dashboard where he'd left them yesterday. He'd been coming every morning since retirement became official, watching from a distance. Jake pulled up beside him. Thought I'd find you here. It's Tuesday. It's been Tuesday for 3 months straight, apparently. Jake climbed into Grafton's truck. Emily's worried about you. I'm fine. Through the binoculars. He found them. Sage lounged in the shade of a mesquite tree. The cubs were stalking something in the grass, probably a lizard. They doubled in size, patterns becoming more distinct. Trail camera caught something interesting yesterday, Jake said, showing his phone. Look! The night vision footage showed Sage at the sanctuary's edge. Another leopard appeared, male, fully grown, magnificent. They touched noses briefly before he melted back into the darkness. She's got a visitor, Jake said. Maria thinks he's from the Southern Territory. That's 40 miles away. Love travels. Grafton lowered the binoculars. Speaking of which, when are you proposing to Emily? Jake's ears reddened. How did you... You've been carrying that ring box for 2 weeks. Left jacket pocket. This weekend, if that's okay with you. You don't need my permission. No. But I'd like your blessing. Grafton watched Sage stand, stretch. Even on 3 legs, she moved with purpose. You have it. They sat in companionable silence. A roadrunner sprinted past, chased by one of the cubs. The cub gave up after 20 yards, flopping dramatically in the dust. Winston's doing better, Jake said. Physical therapy's helping. He's planning something for next month. What kind of something? Won't say, but just grins and changes the subject. Grafton's phone buzzed. Message from Rebecca Stone. The documentary's first cut was ready. Did he want to see it? He put the phone away without responding. Some stories didn't need to be relived. 1 year later, Tommy Caldwell Wildlife Sanctuary, grand opening. The banner stretched across the renovated barn, where wild things cross safely. Winston stood at the podium. No wheelchair now, just a cane he barely used. The crowd included ranchers, conservationists, state officials, and 3 news crews. My son Tommy died believing the world could be better, Winston began. that humans and wildlife could coexist. I spent 10 years angry at the world for taking him, but this past year taught me something. Tommy's dream didn't die with him. Grafton stood with Emily and Jake near the back. Emily's engagement ring caught the light when she squeezed Jake's hand. Her mobile veterinary practice had expanded to include wildlife rehabilitation. She'd been the one to suggest converting Winston's ranch. "This sanctuary will serve as a wildlife corridor," Winston continued. "A safe passage between territories, and it starts with someone you all know." On cue, the screen behind him lit up. Trail camera footage from that morning. Sage leading her cubs through the corridor, heading north toward new hunting grounds. But she wasn't alone. The male leopard followed, and behind him, padding carefully through the underbrush, a third cub, smaller than Sage's two, clearly younger. The crowd murmured. Winston smiled. "Seems our girl's been busy." The footage continued. Sage stopped at a water station Winston had installed, all 4 cats drinking together, a family. "The Leopard Foundation has provided a grant," Winston announced. $3 million for corridor development. Bill Crawford, yes, that Bill Crawford, has donated 40 acres of his ranch for expansion. Crawford stood up, uncomfortable with attention. "It's what neighbors do," he said simply. After the ceremony, Grafton found himself at the spot where he'd first seen Sage. The snare had been removed, the area restored. A small marker read, "Beginning of something better." "Dad?" Emily approached with a tablet. The review board made their decision. Full pension restored, plus commendation for exposing the trafficking ring. "Doesn't matter now." "No, but it's nice they admitted they were wrong." She showed him another document, and this came from National Geographic. They want to fund a permanent monitoring position. Basically, they want to pay you to do what you're already doing, watching over Sage and her family. "I don't need—" "It's $60,000 a year. Dad, take it." Jake joined them. "There's something else. Volkov was arrested in Romania. Extradition hearing is next month. He's going away for a long time." Grafton felt something ease in his chest. The last shadow lifting. That evening, they gathered at Winston's for dinner. Doc Chen was there, Maria Yazzie, even Morrison, who'd become an unlikely ally in the conservation effort. They ate and talked, and carefully didn't mention Sarah or Tommy, though their presence was felt. As the sun set, Winston raised his beer. "To the ones who aren't here but should be." They drank in silence, each lost in their own memories. Later, Grafton stood on Winston's porch, watching the stars emerge. Movement caught his eye. There, silhouetted against the ridge, a leopard, just for a moment, then gone. He couldn't be sure it was Sage, but he chose to believe it was. Final scene. Dawn, 1 year and 3 days later. Grafton sat in his truck at the old observation point. Binoculars unnecessary. He could see them clearly from here. 5 leopards moving through the corridor. Sage led, her gait distinctive. 3 juveniles followed, nearly adult-sized now. The male brought up the rear, watchful. They paused at the boundary between territories. Sage turned, looked directly at Grafton's truck. The distance was too great to see her eyes, but he knew she saw him. After all this time, she still checked. His phone rang. Emily. "Dad, you need to come to the hospital." His chest tightened. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Just come. Labor and delivery." The drive took 20 minutes. He found Aunt Emily and Jake in the hallway, both grinning. "Congratulations, Grandpa," Emily said. Through the window, he saw the baby, tiny, perfect, sleeping. "It's a girl," Jake said. "We're naming her Sarah." Grafton's throat closed. He nodded, unable to speak. "There's something else," Emily said. She showed him her phone. A message from Winston with a photo. Trail camera footage from an hour ago. Sage and her family. But behind them, barely visible, 2 more leopards, young adults, probably siblings. "They're coming back," Emily said. "The leopards are returning to Arizona." Grafton held his granddaughter for the first time. She weighed nothing, everything. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. Through the window, morning sun painted the mountains gold. Somewhere out there, Sage was teaching her cubs to hunt, to survive, to be wild and free. And here, in his arms, another generation beginning. The baby opened her eyes. They were blue now, but would change. Everything changes. Sometimes, if you're very lucky, it changes for the better. His phone buzzed. Message from Winston. Sage had another cub. Motion sensors picked up 4 sets of prints by the water station. Grafton smiled, looking at little Sarah, life continuing, despite everything, because of everything. Some connections, he thought, really do transcend species. They just need a chance to form. Connecting hearts. I need to tell you something. After 40 years carrying a badge, I thought I understood the line between right and wrong. Then Sage came into my life, broken, fierce, protecting her babies with 3 legs and a mother's fury that transcended species. Winston and I, 2 old men hollowed out by loss, found ourselves kneeling in desert dirt, hands bloody from freeing a creature that by law should have been destroyed. We risked everything, careers, freedom, even our lives, for a leopard who couldn't survive in the wild. Why? Because sometimes the heart recognizes truth that the law cannot see. Sage taught us that grief can transform into purpose, that compassion requires courage, and that the connections which matter most often come when we least expect them. Watching my granddaughter Sarah sleep, I understand now what my wife saw in those nature documentaries during her final days. Not just beautiful animals, but proof that life persists, that love crosses every boundary we create, that saving one soul might just save your own. Disclaimer. This is a work inspired by wildlife conservation stories created solely for entertainment purposes. The story does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence or harmful behavior. This statement asserts that all characters and events are products of the author's imagination, and any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental.